But the funny bit is, if you think about it, UX leadership is not for managers per se. It's for every role. I would vouch for every UX designer needs to show some kind of leadership, because you will probably you will be presenting the UX or representing the UX for a certain product, and with that you need to be able to convince product managers to lead them to see that UX vision.
Hello, everyone. In this episode, I'm talking to Jacco Otten, who is a UX Design Manager at Elsevier, a large IT services company creating solutions for researchers and healthcare professionals. Jacco shares his career story and how he transitioned into UX leadership from an individual contributor role. We also talk about the difference between management and leadership and skills you should be working on to grow in this direction. We also touch obviously on the AI topic and the future of the UX design profession, and what we should be. Again, it's all speculation, but what we think will happen in future. Yako also gives really interesting resume and interviewing advice for UX design candidates, and much more. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Well, hello, Yako. Hello. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Hello, Carol. How are you?
I'm pretty good. I was looking forward to this conversation. We tried to schedule this for quite some time, and
It's
finally we
true.
did it. So I appreciate that you found time to join me and to share your experiences and your advice and tips for entry level, junior, intermediate, senior managers in the design world. I really appreciate this.
My pleasure, really. I'm honored.
Okay, so let's begin with just the ground zero. Your story. How did you get into design? What maybe key stages you went through, and what do you do today?
That's a good question, actually. How I got into design. Yeah, probably there's some in there of from young on. I always liked to create great stuff and such. So eventually, that brought me to the Delft University of Technology, where I studied industrial and design engineering. Um, and there was one and that was back in the day when UX, or the term UI even, was not coined. It was all about human computer interaction, or informational
Hmm.
ergonomics, as we called it.
Hmm.
So it was, ergonomics was actually a course that we got, but that was all the physical stuff. And yeah, all the informational bits were just coming up, which I thought was really interesting always. The one big example I always used was the challenge of programming your video recorder to record a TV show, and seeing your parents struggle with that. It's yeah, I thought it was really interesting, and I wanted to do a bit more in that direction. I was also keen on aviation, um, so in the end, I my master's thesis was about I could find some professors and some advisors, got them together on a topic which was about the information provision to pilots while they were flying. So yeah, quite some UI was involved in there essentially already. And after I graduated, I did a bunch of things. Some were related, some were a bit less related to that. Up until a certain stage where I was asked to join a company, or to basically apply for a role as a UX designer. It was a smaller sized company doing B2B software essentially. And I was the first UX designer to join, really. They had a team of 10 developers. Um, and what was really nice about that was that I was able to sort of lay down how I envisioned a design process to be, which is really nice. We in the end quite successful, because I was able to get another designer joining in that. So that was really nice. And after that, I went to my current company, which is now 13 years ago.
Whoa,
Yeah,
that's loyalty.
Yes, yeah. I'm amazed myself, but it's a big company. It's Elsevier, I can tell you that. So we do lots of information provision to the scientific world in all ways, shapes, and forms. It's a large company, so I've worked on many products there, and even in multiple divisions as well. And it was really interesting when I joined Elsevier. There was already a UX team, so before I sort of needed to fight for every argument, and all of a sudden it was like trying to make an argument, and everybody's like, "Yeah, we agree." So that felt like a warm bath. It was really nice. And yeah, there I started as a UX designer, so just working on the products. But I had a bit of a lead role already, so it was not a formal role. It was just I was doing design work, and I was also coordinating some work for the others, essentially. And in the end, this evolved when I was actually moved to what we call life sciences. So that's the products that really target the mostly pharmaceutical industry. Really complex problems, really interesting things there. And when I joined there, it was really interesting. There were two contractors working there. Both were working in St. Petersburg, but they didn't know of each other. And I was the first Elsevier employee to join in that team at that stage. And I was just getting acquainted with both. And one told me that he was doing a design, which was basically a pattern that the other one just recently used already. And I was like, hey, that's interesting. Haven't you talked with each other about this already? So I sort of connected them, which was really, yeah, for them, a really pleasant experience, because all of a sudden they could, in their native language, they could talk. I could bring them some more information about the look and feel, the branding of Elsevier. Um, yeah, and that made me think that there was an opportunity to sort of create an official or semi-official team around that. So I went to my manager saying, well, I'm supposed to be designing for this product, but there's also a bigger thing going on, and will you allow me to sort of create or coordinate and make a bit of a team out of this? And that sort of uh, evolved into, now I have a team of 8 people. First I was just unofficially guiding the folks, so really just leading. At one stage I was the official lead, and now I'm managing, and it's basically a team of 8 designers across 3 countries and 2 time zones. Yeah, and you can see really the basis of all of this has been sharing and reusing patterns to be just efficient and to really help each other out, which is still a really valuable aspect of my team.
Well, that sounds like a very, first of all, impressive loyalty to one company. That's my personal nugget here. I rarely see people these days who can last so many years in one company. Granted, though, I've seen more examples of this. I guess perseverance in large companies when there's like multiple different, especially complex problems to work on, and more opportunities to grow first of all, and to try different things. So it's not really gets all the boring, repetitive, right? So I think that kind of would explain it. So, but still impressive, still impressive.
It's true what you say, by the way. That's this is the first. So the company before I was 4 years, which is already long for me. So, but it's true. It's I see actually quite a few colleagues. It's sort of well, it's not so natural these days anymore. But back in the day, it was just people got in, and then almost up until their retirements are around.
Yeah,
So there's a bunch of people who are there 25 years or so,
yeah.
or longer. But yeah, it's definitely the ability, especially as a designer, to be able to move from one product to another, or even a division, have much different challenges that keeps it interesting, exciting. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And again, like not every person needs that variety, right? And like ability to try different things. But for me, I agree. I'm the same. I appreciate when there are options to choose from, and there is also internal support to try them, right? So my day job right now is at Amazon, and I would say this is one of the most impressive companies that I've heard of, after working obviously in it. So my first hand experience, that has so many different teams, departments, like lines of business. It's just like it's a huge company. So you can spend, like, I can see how one person can spend the whole life working with one company, but just kind of go into different teams and working on different products, even like different devices. They have like voice experience, they have robotics, they have now drones. So there's just like it feels like endless opportunities to try different technologies, different teams, even like level of maturity when you can be just one person team if you enjoy that, or can be a part of a bigger team like with like really detailed processes and like specialized roles. So it's the variety is very appealing, and there is lots of also internal support from the management, from the leadership, um, to really kind of explore different teams and even move within the company regularly.
Very good.
I think, yeah, it's definitely a good perk.
And I guess it's especially if you have such a variety, it's almost like you work for a different company, right?
Exactly. Culture is different. It's like there's only maybe some high level company wide, like Amazon specific things like document writing and like more this leadership principle that they follow, kind of more like their guidelines. But from what I've talked to many people in different parts of the world, different like different brands, right? Because Amazon also acquires or has acquired many different companies, and each company brings its own culture. So it's almost like you're not even actually the paperwork says Amazon, but in reality, it's like completely different everything. So it's very yeah varied from that point of view, which is good.
I recognize it a bit. What I do appreciate still with Elsevier, it's still sort of overviewable, and the UX community is quite close knit. And we also have, for instance, a weekly showcase with the full breadth of all Elsevier UX,
Oh, really?
also
Oh,
to keep that connection. So yeah, and even actually one of the contractors I had in my team last year, and the assignment ended, and she was actually able to find a spot at in another division.
nice.
And but there's yeah, every once in a while we still talk and we see each other, so that's really nice. Yeah,
That's cool. Yeah, with Amazon, it's probably like, yeah, it's not as easy to keep this connection. So it's like it's a huge company,
it's
but yeah,
really huge.
I agree. Let's go back to your journey. So I'm really interested to dig deeper into your experience of transitioning, and how did you really start taking on more like the lead role first, right? As you mentioned, like you're kind of more like organization and really almost like running a team, but without being officially manager. And how like a designer who wants to go the management route, what skills they need to start building, what are the things they need to really, I guess, get ready for to kind of transition to this new role, because nobody will give you like a manager position right away. So
No,
you have to show these leadership skills, you have to show these traits, behaviors for, I would say, like years potentially, consistently, to prove that you can be a manager before you're already a manager, or like there is a job for you, right? So it's, maybe you can share some tips from your experience.
yeah, that's correct indeed. Yeah, where did it start? That's a really good one. It's I've when I joined Elsevier, I was just really thinking I would be just an individual contributor, and they asked you, can you also do the coordination role? And I must say, I enjoyed doing that already. So with that, I think sort of the seed was already planted. Um, I think yeah, the realization for me to really go into the management track, to the people leading role, was that well, obviously everybody gets older, luckily, and but still there's I can think I'm a real good designer, which I'm, well, hopefully everybody thinks that, right? And you need to have that, to be convinced about yourself to really be a good designer. But what I was thinking was that there's so many good people coming off from these design schools, and there's going to be a day when there's people that are just much better than me. So what better role than for me to have is to step away to create space for them, but then use my experience to basically create the venue for them to facilitate and to help them with my experience and my connections to become an even better designer and to be successful in what they do. And I think that that realization really brought me to, okay, yeah, I want to go into this management track.
And talking about the fact that management manager's job is it's very different from being a designer, right? So it's like you completely, it's almost like a completely separate job.
Yes and no, I want to say. And I'll go into management versus leadership here, because management for sure, which is, it's a different role. But the funny bit is, if you think about it, UX leadership is not for managers per se. It's for every role. I would vouch for every UX designer needs to show some kind of leadership, because you will probably you will be presenting the UX or representing the UX for a certain product, and with that you need to be able to convince product managers to lead them to see that UX vision. So even on a lower scale, and obviously it's a different kind of leadership, but it's leadership. You need to show that already there. So it's sort of a evolving kind of thing there. For me, another thing, what I realized well, a long while ago, is that in order for UX to be effective, you need to be proactive. So you want to not come in late in the process of creating a product, because then you're basically just the surface, and you can do some touch up left and right, and that's it. But if you really want to you know build a good UI, UX, a good product, essentially, you want to be involved early and upfront. So, I've always been striving for being involved earlier and earlier. I think that's also helping in getting more into that leadership position.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, so one of the aspects that you mentioned, though, is then, which is completely different from your design skills, is to be able to sort of be that natural leader. So without the management power, if you will, quote unquote, you still want to be able to convince people on with good reasoning that they should go a certain route, which is favorable for the product and for what you see as being a good product from your perspective.
Yeah, and with great power, as you said, also comes great responsibility, right? So, like, I've considered myself from time to time. I come back to this idea if I want to go the management track, and every time I think about this, and I learn more about, maybe I'm not learn, but refresh my memory on the not so fun parts of being a manager, about like layoffs and really kind of difficult conversations, because as a manager, that's part of your job, right? So, and especially with the recent round of layoffs, like across many different companies in tech, it's kind of reminded me of that part of the job, like, because like in the good times, right, you're going to do more hiring and kind of coaching and training, but you don't really necessarily like have to let people go, even because like during the downturns, from what I understand, managers have, not managers, companies have to let go completely competent and smart and intelligent people, like for non-performance issues, or just because downsizing and stuff. So, and this like really, I would say, an activity that I would not be looking forward to.
Hopefully nobody is looking forward to that, to be really honest.
Sociopath, maybe.
I wouldn't be working for that manager, to be honest. Yeah, no, that's definitely not my hobby, and luckily I've not been in that position either. Um, but it's interesting because it's what you say is already applicable for anybody who joins your team that will want to move on at one certain stage, and or maybe go to a different team or sees another opportunity somewhere. And I've become sort of my basic stance has become that, as and this is, I think, as UX designer we should be quite capable of doing this, as we are change managers essentially, right? If you, as a designer, if you just want to persist everything that's there, then why are you a designer? Because you want to change, you want to you want to go against the status quo,
Yeah, and make a
and
dent in the universe.
yeah, exactly. And with that, you need to accept that people come and people go, and when they choose to move to another assignment or do something else, then it's unfortunate for you as a manager or for the team, but it's actually good for them, right? So to be able to evolve them, and that makes it much easier to let people go as well. I'm not saying that, there's actually last week, there's a slight reorganization going on where a certain part of my team will be reporting into a different team. So, and this is a person I just hired a few months ago, um, and she's doing really good. And then you learn that, yes, she needs to leave you as a manager and then go somewhere else. Like, no, and that's frustrating, I can tell you. Yeah, but I, that notion is that, people, everybody, yeah, everything changes, and that's not bad. You just need to make sure that, things go as good as possible in that sense.
Hmm.
And it's a bit, as while I was thinking about this interview, I was thinking essentially as a manager, it's the, and this is very close to as a UX designer. You basically are working on the UX of a UX designer. So what is their experience, and how can you best support them? And how, what, if you need to tell a not so fun message, do you sort of postpone that, or do you just, tear the band-aid off just straight up, and just be clear about it, so that they at least know what they are up for?
Yeah, yeah, and I agree. Like there are probably also, I guess, known best practices from the I guess years of psychology research and business and companies uh, about how to deliver this bad news, right? Like the recommendations or like the best practices, so to say. However, I've noticed that and again, I'm not aware of these best practices, but I have best practices that I determined for myself from my own experience what I would expect as a receiving side, right, of this message potentially.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like just kind of, I would appreciate directness and really cut to the chase and more like really give me the message, right? Instead of kind of delaying and potentially sometimes for weeks, months. So I think also like the emotions and like really this not fear, but maybe hesitation of what would be the reaction from this other side, from the person that who receives the news. As a manager, you may experience this kind of friction. Kind of maybe actually I can do it like next week and so on. So I can understand like more emotions kind of really impacting how this his communication happens.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. It's definitely true. Yeah, you need to tell it one day anyway.
But not today.
Yeah, it's yeah, it's well, and again, luckily, I've not been in that position. So yeah, it's a bit theoretical and from my perspective, but yeah, yeah, it's obviously not the reason why you want to become a manager.
Mhm. Talking about challenges and like frustrations as a manager, like maybe you can share what you think, like what maybe keeps you up at night, like what are really kind of the biggest struggle or problem that a UX manager has, and maybe I don't want you to go into like specifics of your particular employer, but like as a role itself, like is there like any maybe pattern or some kind of more universal thoughts that the UX manager thinks about?
Well, yeah, I think one of the most universal things are you always need more UXers, but the
I've heard about
budget
that.
is not there. So fighting for that budget and trying to find places where you can get the budget from. Um, it's an everlasting thing that's going on. Yeah, it's especially, so we report into technology, and then it's so the money is that the budgets are equal for developers as much as they are for UX designers or researchers. And then it's always a bit of a give and take in that sense. And yeah, we always see room for improvement there.
Why do you think that is? Like, why do you think? Because this is not a like I've heard about this problem many, many times, and frankly, I experienced this problem daily, so to say, over the course of the last decade, working in different companies. And it seems like it's a very probably if you had to choose one common problem across all design teams, is like we need more people, and we always kind of keep fighting like really convincing stakeholders. Like, what do you think that this problem exists?
That's a good one. It it's not easy to really answer that, but I think in part is UX is quite a younger profession in that sense. So we need sort of to still, in terms of maturity, always sort of show who we are. But there's also, as designers, as and I think this is sort of a key part there, is what is design, right? And lots of people still think it's sort of the beautification of it, right? It's aesthetics. Whilst if you talk about Jobs, Stephen Jobs, he already said, right, it's integrated. It's basically the everything, and how you make a whole out of it. And that also means you need to sort of be a bit of a product manager. You need to be a bit of a programmer, or at least think alongside. You need to be able to do all of those things. So you will be having some sort of, what is it, a shared responsibility? Where's the cutoff line essentially there? And right, and if you have all these product managers already there that do already talk with your customers, so they're thinking, oh, we can do this, right? Why do we need a designer for this? And also the other thing is that it's everybody has an opinion about design, and but that maybe people then think is therefore I am a designer. Well, we know it's different than that, but yeah, it's interesting how that goes. And to a certain extent, look at the C-level suite. You have a CEO, you have a CTO, what's the CFO, so the financials, technology, yeah, and all of them are there represented, but the CXO is not always, or regularly not in a company. So you're not being represented on that level, and I think that's part of that deal in that sense as well.
How would you solve this problem? Blue sky.
Oh, that's a good one. Well, maybe get that CXO in there so that they can sort of trickle it down. It's showing your worth, I think, as well. And you know, people need to realize, like, it's not us versus them. It's actually, we can be the glue in between all these aspects that can bring a product forward really, really well. And they need to sort of see that. But it also means that if you talk about that um, maybe they need a bit less product managers or a bit less developers, which is a bit harder conversation than
Mhm. Yeah,
obviously. Yeah,
tricky.
it's a tricky
Yeah,
one.
it's definitely a big hairy problem that doesn't seem to have an easy solution. Yeah. So, but yeah, so far I've seen like that the most common attempt to improve the situation is to really from the ground up trying to show the value, and kind of it's really really slow, very often painful process of building this trust and kind of getting more stakeholders, education, um, and yeah, it feels like that every next team is like different, and you have to do it like from scratch again. And yeah, it's definitely lots of repetition and yeah,
Yeah, one step at a
same
time.
message. Yeah, exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
patience is key. Yeah, that's true.
Okay, so let's talk about your part of your job when you interview designers, when you hire designers, right? I'm sure even like before you officially started being a manager, I'm sure that you were involved in reviewing applications and really kind of interviewing. candidates. So I wonder if, from you again, just your personal opinion and experience, right, and conclusions. What lessons learned from all these interviews? Like what stands out? Who are the most successful candidates? What's like maybe not to do, like red flags, all that stuff. So any recommendations, any advice on that?
Okay, it's a good one. And yes, I've hired a few meanwhile. So yeah, I've seen a bunch of enough resumes and portfolios fly by. Um, well, I think one big red flag for me would be to just well, one is actually not sending a portfolio over, which I've seen. It's like this is a resume. It's like, okay, that's interesting, but and if you think about it, it's not that complicated really, because I don't know a person. So I don't know what kind of designer that person is, and I want to know what kind of designer this person is to see if this person can be successful in the team, because that's my concern. I want this person to be successful. Um, and in order to be successful in my space, you need to be able to. So we don't have lone wolf designers, for instance. Um, you so you need to be able to work with lots of people, because the things we work on are complex. They're really complex. So you need lots of people, product managers with a lot of in-depth knowledge. Obviously, you need to work with front end, back end, SMEs, so subject matter experts. You cannot do this on your own. So you need to be a team player as well. And to be able to bring all these stakeholders along in your design process, it's essential that you are able to provide your design rationale. Because if you start talking about, so basically, if I would be asking a designer, why did you do this, just out of curiosity, and they say, well, because I liked it. It's like, okay, but if you talk about liking, it's going to be interesting, because we can talk about, at a bar in the evenings. It could stretch out for hours, because if you need to have a discussion over liking, you will never, yeah, you'll never resolve anything in that way. So you need to be able to articulate why you choose certain decisions, to bring people along, to have that conversation, the discussion about, is that the best solution, or can we have alternatives in there. And that's for me a key aspect that I want to see in people's resumes, or in their portfolio. Then I want them to. So one other red flag is just show some basically dribble page where you only have some really nice renderings. Like, well, that looks cool. Okay, what now?
Won't cut it.
No, it's like, okay, yeah, sorry, it looks beautiful, but yeah, that's not what I'm looking for. What I need really is to that if you want to apply for a role in my team, you need to bring me along with, what kind of designer are you? How did you do this? It doesn't need to look pretty. Design is actually, design process is messy. It's iterative. It requires sketches. Show me those. How did you get to the insights? How did what were the options that you had? Why did you choose certain things? What information were you struggling with? What would you improve later on if you look back? Because that tells me a lot about who you are as a professional designer working in a team. Also, what was your role there? And if it's just a little role, but it was a key aspect in there, by all means mention that, because that's what brings me in. Tell a story, which as a designer is crucial anyways. Be able to tell a story. So yeah, that would be the key aspect there.
What about resumes? Any tips? Any advice?
Yeah, resumes are always a bit harder, and what I like in Elsevier, typically, we had some note about, the seniority requires so many years on the job experience, which makes sense, but we started rethinking that from an inclusivity and diversity perspective, that there might just be people around. And we saw that during COVID, or after COVID, where people were rethinking their roles a bit. You might have had quite some experience related and I have added some on on point skills meanwhile to be enough to be considered in that seniority. So we've become a bit more wider in that. Yeah, as long as it's sort of a gate stage essentially there, right? It's just basically ticking the boxes. Does this look okay? No, no crazy things in there that somebody's done 3 jobs at once or so, or things like that.
So, like, if thinking through all your experience interviewing, maybe some candidates really stand out from others. Like, what really makes them special?
Which is a really good question. Yeah, I think for me, people who have stood out are the ones that ask questions to me. And in every interview at the end, I give people the opportunity to ask questions. And yeah, that's the ones who really are prepared or want to know a bit more. Just really show that they are interested and involved, which is just really nice. And the other aspect is also typically I do interview with a number of my team, also to get more diverse input from them in how they appreciate this candidate, and to see them interact with them, to see if they are a team at if I want to say right, and fit in the team. That's obviously really interesting as well, and to see if they I think that those are the people that really stand out most to me.
It's funny you say about the first part about the asking the questions, right? So, and I was trying to remember also like who would really kind of stuck in my memory after all, because I also kind of was involved in interviewing many times. And you're right, like it's true for myself as well, especially when the questions are really tailored to the product or the company, or basically it shows that the person invested their time and researched the company and all the resources available, and really thought through the questions, and really kind of shows their curiosity. And I like it probably stands out because so few people do this.
Yeah,
The
true.
vast majority of the questions, sometimes they don't ask questions at all, but the vast majority of the questions that I can recall, the vast majority of the candidates ask questions of really kind of what you can Google online, like questions to ask in an interview, right? And like really generic, really, yeah, doesn't stand out for sure. I agree.
Agreed. I've had one where it was really challenging me. It was like, whoa, which was really, at one point it was like, okay, but it was good for me also
That's
to
a bit too good.
be on point. Um, yeah, agreed. And it's, maybe as a tip as well, being in a hiring interview, it's a dialogue that's going on. It's not a one way. We ask you, you deliver. It's really like if you're part of the team, we talk and we share things together. So yeah, if that already shows there, that's a good sign.
Hmm. Hmm. Sounds good. Okay, let's move to the bigger topics and the future of this profession.
Huh.
I'm curious to hear your thoughts, and especially in your industry, because it's quite, I would think, much more complicated and complex than the majority of other products. Like
True.
healthcare is like really challenging. From what I know, I guess like I can imagine, because I don't think I ever worked with healthcare, probably not. And I suspect that there is a bit more human touch needed, not a bit more, but maybe much more human touch needed, even like in the simple tasks, just because there's like such a big risk of error, or just kind of relying on AI would be probably would come later to healthcare. This is just my uneducated guess. But I'm curious to hear like what you think about the new wave of tools and the technology, and how fast everything's developing, and what impact will it have on the UX designer profession and healthcare.
with new tools, are you thinking more in terms of AI or
Chat
are you?
GPT, yes,
Yeah,
and all this kind of generative that kind of get better every day, every
yeah,
hour.
yeah, and it goes fast. It's amazing. Well, it touches us on really two fronts. One is using it as a tool for your products, and the other obviously is how does it affect you as a designer later on. So what will the influence of AI be in our profession? uh,
Exactly, and how you can prepare for that, and
yeah,
all the new joiners, right? So who just kind of starting out, maybe they should focus on some other skills and some other parts of this job to kind of get future proofed.
yeah, it's an interesting and intriguing question, which is at this stage really hard to answer, because it's evolving so quickly, and it's not like, yeah, I actually have a bunch in my team who really want to get. So we were going to development plans, and quite a few are really interested and wanna go deeper into AI there. But it's not that there's a course out there that says, this is UI or AI, and this is how you use it for your in your profession, right? There's a lot of discovery for yourself there as well. Um, it's it's intriguing because, and now I will be talking about it to use it in your products. I think so. It's what you can sort of bring it back to an essence where it's just technology. Sounds really odd, but it's just technology, right? And it's I think the key question for any UX designer is how do you make this technology humane? So what is the human measure in this? So how do you, and especially around something that, if you ask a question one day and it gives you a certain answer, and you would ask the same question another day, it would give a different answer, then it's going to be interesting, right? And because then the question is, okay, how can I trust this technology? What can I expect from this piece of technology? If it's going to be different anytime, is it going to be helpful for me, or is it actually reducing my trust on the tool? And I think this is sort of the, regardless of the technology, if you see that as a black box, it's as the challenge for any designer is still, how can we make this transparent, how can we make this understandable for any human being, what it does, and what you can expect from it, right, to a certain level, and how can you bring that clarity, that openness, so that okay, I can use this for this, um, which is in essence is what we already do today. So yeah, and it's going to be different, obviously. But I think if you bring it back to that essence and start from there to rebuild it, and think about, okay, what implications does it have for anything like this? And for instance, I was just having a conversation this week with one of my folks. It was about well, basically the conversational aspect of it. It basically means that from a designer's perspective, or from your perspective as a product group, how do you want this to come this tool across? Do you want to what tone of voice does it need? So what is that conversational aspect? And how do you fill that in? Which is maybe a bit overlooked, or more towards UX writing to a certain point, but maybe that needs to have more prominence if you used a tool like that in a way like that. So, and in essence, any product you can see as having some sort of traits, right? So how do you want to get your product across? What type of error messages do you prevent, or do you provide? Is it really, really strict, or do you do a bit more around it to bring the message nicely? And so yeah, there's again a lot of parallels there. As a designer, and how it will affect our profession is interesting. I think I see potential, for instance, in the idea that knowing that you can basically create code already, and quite trustworthy code. It should be much simpler to create prototypes that are quite elaborate, right? Right now, we know in our tools we can do so much, but at a certain stage it becomes really difficult. But if you can, let ChatGPT or any other generative AI piece create a prototype for you with all the various interactions that you need to validate, that can actually be quite a time saver, right? Things like that. What I also heard, for instance, is that it can help you build your design system, which is also a really laborious thing. And building is one, right? But maintaining is another.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes where things fall.
Yeah.
So to that aspect, I think that can be really helpful there. But typically, what I see right now still is that it's more on the diverging aspect of if you're more in the diverging stage, that it's Miro, for instance, already with their AI tools, it can help you bring new suggestions, be sort of a conversation partner to a certain extent, to help you get your thoughts more structured, and to maybe come up with some alternative ideas.
Do you use it for in your role?
I have not done it yet, and we need to be cautious in I think in any company, because if you share things
Yeah.
in a platform like ChatGPT, obviously it's out in the open, so we can only use fenced off instances.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to be really careful with how we use it. Still,
Yeah. Yeah. Makes sense. Yeah, I agree. I think the potential of minimizing the tedious, repetitive, like like manual tasks that we have to do today with AI. I'm looking forward to that. Uh, I'm I'm curious, really, how the freed up time, the time that we kind of these tools free up from designers, how this time will be effectively used for something else, something more maybe deep strategic thinking, maybe. I don't know. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Like I'm curious, like because like if you think about the current, and again we can average it out like a typical UX designer's job, right? Like with like different activities, designer related, stakeholder management related, presentations, like design systems. Like if you can think of all the different slices in this whole spectrum of all the possible UX design activities, UX designer activities, and these will be like different across different companies. But like you can compile like this spectrum, right? Universal for
yeah.
the industry. Which ones will get kind of lower with AI, like because it's like automated, so you don't have to spend as much time because you have these tools, and instead of like doing this for 3 days, you can do it like for within an hour, right? And like you have this extra 2 days left now. Like which of these other verticals or slices will get that extra time? I wonder.
Provided it will go that way, because I was actually talking to a number of development leads, and they come up with all this new technology, and they basically see their work speeding up 3 times as well. So probably we still need to catch up with them in the end. So I'm not sure how much time we will gain. But actually, one aspect I did not touch upon is where I think UX designers can be really well suited is also be thoughtful about maybe the not so nice aspects of AI, and make sure that the things that are being designed for are being done in a proper way. Um, and yeah, I think as UX designers, and I see that not only for AI, but basically as the whole design movement. Yeah, when we started doing UI work, and then it went to become UX. Now it's more strategic. So yeah, probably one of the newer fronts is also to be responsible about our designs that we create, right? And to really, probably we need to spend quite some time to make sure that what we create is done right and socially acceptable as well.
You're talking about like more ethical side of the
Ethical
design
side,
question.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a tricky one to. I don't know. Like, I'm kind of maybe it's just also my mind and my education, like background, like because I come from like computer, like information systems design and like computer science kind of mix. I kind of, even though like it sounds like a very human heavy thinking activity or like area of design, like ethics, right? But somehow I think that you can define rules in a more like this data analytical way that the system can follow to use in that kind of in that logic when it generates output. So kind of I don't think it will be a problem. It's just a matter of time, maybe like a month, a year, I don't know, like 5 years.
Mhm.
But I think it will be possible to automate, or at least kind of automate, not necessarily AI, but automate that part of the thinking uh, to kind of add this layer to the design results, outcomes, and everything. Because if you really kind of analyze ethics, I think it's a kind of a pretty clear list of you can define a pretty clear list of kind of almost like do's and don'ts, right? Like how I see it, like a checklist of sorts. And obviously it's simplified, and there's like lots of like nuances. It depends on like context and other kind of these situations. But I think it's not impossible.
It, I, intriguing, really. It's hard for me to really. Yeah, you might be true there. It's yeah. It's just as UX designers, we are always looking at the humane aspect of things, and I think and yeah, it makes sense that there's probably some bunch of rule sets, but obviously it's about the various this really specific nuances, right? And if it is it really that is that a full on logic, or is it something else that's at play, right?
Yeah, and I agree. Like there will be some kind of clear, I guess, guidelines, but there's also kind of all this gray area in between, right? And like if you had like all this potential complexity in the context, I think it will be definitely risky to follow to allow this automation system to kind of take like full control of it, right? So there still will be needed kind of a human check. It's almost like reminds me of this the um, um, automated cars, like the AI driving systems, when you can automate it up to like 95%, but the remaining 5%, it's almost like impossible in the real kind of world application. And if you allow, like, if you kind of trust the AI to do this remaining five on its own, it's almost like millions of people will die or something like this, like over the course of some time. So it's like bigger risk reward ratio there.
Yeah, the crucial 5% there, right? Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, is it even possible to kind of get to the 100%? I am not certain. With
Maybe we'll
humans,
find
humans
out,
are humans are
Kirill.
tricky.
Yeah.
You never know what they will do.
No.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, so maybe we're already on time. Maybe one last question. That's going back to kind of resume portfolio interviewing and kind of just the application side. So thinking about the current situation when layoffs are still happening, right, and more people joining the job market with more experience. So if you had, for example, if you're just intermediate or junior level, how would you really, like you personally, how would you approach job search today to stand out from this kind of the rest of in the sea of all other applicants?
Yeah, I'd say first of all, just always try to be the best version of yourself, and but stay close to who you are, because you can sort of maybe, if you are in an application, you might get some veneer on, and it might look good, but in the end you want to be in a place where it's a nice fit for you as well, where you can be successful, right? um so I think that's a crucial bit that you always need to do. Yeah, and I think if you want to, I think it's crucial to at least to stay connected to your craft. So keep on doing it, even if you don't, if you are in between jobs or so, and then still, and maybe through voluntary work or so, that there's a space where your design skills can be honed, or maybe some soft skills, and which if you want to go for a management tracker one day, those are much more important than your design skills. Then yeah, I think that would be my approach to it. And yeah, try to use your network, make connections. There's luckily all sorts of UX communities around, which are always a good source. Yeah.
Yeah, sounds good. Okay, last question. If money wasn't a problem and you didn't have to worry about this, what would you do? I saw you have a bunch of hobbies, so I wonder if there's like something that you would really switch to.
Yeah, I think if money would not be an option, I think I would want to go into theater production. I really love that magic world, and being creative there, and using technology to really make it come alive. I think that would be something that I would probably
Theater, you mean
be
like
doing
the
then.
plays and like all the characters and everything?
Yeah, a musical. Mostly, also my wife and I really love musicals. So yeah, that would be, I think, yeah, the place
Interesting.
where I would be going then.
As a work, I guess, at the industry, perhaps like Disney and like with their more creative and artistic approach to their products and experiences, maybe an interesting avenue to explore. So
Well, maybe
something
one day.
came
Yeah,
to mind.
I'll keep that in mind. Thanks.
Can you imagine like designing an experience for new Disneyland?
I actually have been thinking about that. Where it's just indeed designing a roller coaster, and actually not only that, but also the waiting experience, right? That they
Yeah,
already
yo,
taken
there are
it
many
down.
parts like service design. It's
Yeah.
definitely away from the screens, and like it's a different mindset you have to take on. I had some experience with service design. Definitely had to change my mindset quite a bit to think like outside of just device, but like everything that's around the person. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that would be a lovely challenge. Yeah.
Okay, so if anybody wants to find you online and chat more, ask more questions, maybe clarify something that you said, is
Sure.
there a way to reach you?
I think the easiest way to do so is just try to connect through with me on LinkedIn. But don't just send me an invite to connect, because I'm not looking forward to just widen my connection. But just reach out to me with a question or a story, or a reason why you want to connect with me. Because if I don't know you again, right, it's why would I want to connect with you? So,
Hmm.
but
So
still feel free. Yeah, be
So
cool.
you don't like the generic copy paste messages that people send.
Well, if I know the person and I've worked with the person, then for sure I don't mind just sending that standard message. But if I don't know you yet, and if I can help you in any way, shape, or form, then let me know that. Then yeah,
Yeah, and that's another way to stand out, like asking the right question in that message.
exactly. Yes.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you, Jacco. This was super interesting. I learned quite a few. You planted a few interesting thoughts in my head, seeds about the management world, and yeah, I love the conversation. Thank you.
It was really my pleasure, Kirill. Yeah, thanks for inviting me to this podcast.